Hello, I am Vitold and I just gave back to the dealer a Honda NC750X with dual clutch transmission that I rented for some time. Right in the beginning, I've got to say that Honda successfully teased me, listing this motorcycle right next to an Africa Twin 1100 and the new Transalp 750 as an adventure motorcycle. Now I know that if a manufacturer puts into the same category also a traditional moped, you should not trust them, and that's what Honda did. And if you're hoping to see me on an off-road track, on a trail, on the NC750X here, you might be a little bit disappointed, and I feel tricked myself a little bit now. Not that this was the plan. So I took the bike knowing that it's very short with a seat at only 80 centimeters. This and super small suspension travel at just 12 centimeters in the front and rear already suggested that all adventures that it can handle will be, limited. Some truly adventure bikes have almost twice as much, and for example an Africa Twin 1100 is one of those. But still, I thought that at least this one is quite light and so may be manageable. And it is. When you move it around your garage, it does feel light and easy to move here and there with no struggle. But yeah, forget any off-roading, as you will feel like you're hurting this Honda even on a gravel road. So what is this even? I now know what it is and I have eventually figured it out. There is one specific purpose that this thing will be great for, and it will serve it well. So stay tuned and let's cover the topic. NC750X has two cylinders. It's an inline engine with 745 cubic centimeters of displacement and not very impressive 58 horsepower. Honda states even 58.6 horsepower, which kind of suggests that that 0.6 is still important for this bike. What makes more difference is that it's got 69 Nm of torque, which altogether, along with a fairly low mass of 224 kilograms in the version with DCT and a tank full of fuel, make it right fine. Not always, however. My bike had DCT and this is what I wanted to try, as otherwise it would be just another small bike with not very exciting engine, I think. But DCT makes it much more interesting to me, just like this electric office chair. So that's too high. So in the city and riding below, let's say 80 to 100 kilometers per hour, the performance, I think it is quite manageable. Yet, well, it is if you've got the bike in a sport mode. It's a bit harsh then when you're setting off, as once the transmission connects everything, you're already at some RPM, so it may just boom, jump forward. Then again, after some time releasing the throttle in the sport mode, you may also feel the operation of the transmission along with noticing gear changes, especially going down. This is not exactly what I expected, but that's because I tried an absolutely flawless behavior of DCT in Africa Twin 1100. It is perfect in that bike, but here for some reason it is more harsh with gear changes and has that shaky moment of engaging. It doesn't happen always, but especially right from the start when all the fluids are still cold, it is even more noticeable then. It's nothing dangerous, I think, but a few times it would change a gear down in a way that would shake me a little bit. Not much, but a little bit. So it's good, it's okay, but it's not great in terms of transmission operation here in this bike. In the sport mode, it delivers power that you need for it to ride comfortably. I think that's actually pretty okay, considering the expectations towards the bike. But then there's a lot of engine braking too. And so whenever you close the throttle, it adds to the shaky experience, especially in the city when it happens, well, more often. And this bike simply needs to be ridden in the city as it is. And I'll explain that in a moment. So then after feeling like you would like for it to become gentle with you, you switch to standard riding mode and oh dear, it is so smooth. When you close the throttle approaching some traffic lights, it gently cruises towards them with no shaking, no rapid movement, and not much slowing down, so not that much engine braking in this mode. Very enjoyable and relaxing experience. Then you set off again, it may still engage with a kick to your butt, and then you want to speed up. So you roll the throttle more, and more, and more, and not what is going on. So you roll it wide open and it would not downshift for some reason, but just use the same gear until you reach maximum RPM. And this is weird. This similar behavior I noticed in Africa Twin in also the D mode, so the, let's call it the standard mode for the purposes of this video. But if I roll the throttle wide open in standard mode, it somehow, I mean, it means in my head at least that I want 100% of acceleration. And in some cases, I'm sure that this requires a downshift. But the bike thinks otherwise. And instead of that, you get a light, an icon in the upper right corner of the display which changes colors. And if you roll it wide open, it's getting red. My guess is that it's an eco-riding guide, basically. And oh dear Honda, just please don't. Still, I'm glad that there's no eco mode. I think the standard mode is basically working as an eco mode. It's a motorcycle, for God's sake, and you've got all the colors of the rainbow in that light. If you're into those kinds of things, if you enjoy that, that's great. But my summary is that in the sport mode, the engine does manage to get you to speeds that you wanted in the city, and it does it fine. It can be quick enough for a 50-kilometer speed limit in the cities, above that too, but it's getting a bit scary because of literally no wind protection, and this would be one of my two biggest complaints, by the way. Then in the standard mode, the bike is nicely smooth, but you may forget about any sort of flexibility. If you set off with fire in your eyes from the traffic lights right from the beginning, from 0 kilometers per hour, it is okay. But if you want to accelerate from 50 kilometers per hour, already being it's some gear, you better switch the modes first, or you just use manual mode to downshift first. And to me, it's not what I would want on a bike with DCT. I would rather just switch modes to sport. The engine produces a nicer sound than I would expect, looking at its size and its power, so it's manageable here, it's quite okay. It also doesn't get any hot, so no heat management problems. I wasn't pushing it that much, it was rather still cold, but I don't expect there to be any heat issues based on my current experiences with this Honda. It also doesn't vibrate too much. It is transmission's job to not let you use too low of a gear, and so there's basically no risk of making the bike sort of choke itself and vibrate. Therefore, it's nice and smooth here. Now, the first really big downside that I already mentioned is the wind protection. The issues here are three. First is that the windshield does, well, close to nothing. So it doesn't do anything, in other words. So you're getting all the windscreen in your helmet, in your chest and shoulders. I'm 1 meter 83 centimeters tall, or 6 feet tall, and the second issue is that I am not only hit from the front, which I would simply fix with a taller windshield, but there is also airflow coming from the bottom, and man, it's violent. So if you're catching cold easily or have some sort of sinuses issues, expect them to get worse with this bike. Above just 40 kilometers per hour, I would get all the wind inside my helmet from the bottom, cooling and also drying nicely my eyes very successfully, and at the same time inserting all the sand, all the dirt and other things that fly in the air that are thrown by cars into my eyes. And that is a deal breaker for me. But it also suggests what not to do with the bike, and this is kind of where I'm going with it. The third challenge is that you cannot do anything about the first two problems because the windshield is not adjustable. There's no height adjustment. So game over here. And I'll try with a taller windshield and a deflector possibly. If any of you have tried that, please do let us know in the comments, as it may be very important. It's a nice bike, and since the weather wasn't the best during my time, I really struggled with my throat also and my face getting extremely cold. I was wearing a helmet. A very strange feeling, so yeah, if we could avoid that, any tips are appreciated. But how is it actually to sit on this Honda, since it's very low and we already know that it's not a real adventure motorcycle? The seat is really comfortable. It is white, it is soft enough for my taste, and with no hard edges on the sides. I like it. The handlebar is narrow comparing to other adventure motorcycles, but for where this bike should be used, so on the tarmac, I think it's totally fine. It is not super narrow also, so it's not like horse riding. It's fine for this bike. The foot pegs are located in places that make me feel much better than I was expecting initially, and to compare with, for example, Yamaha Tracer 9 GT, I feel cramped on that bike. and it's hard for me to use the rear brake as the angles are just not right for my supermodel long legs. Here on Honda, I've got no issues of such kind at all. Honda simply knows how to make a good base for motorcycles, and I respect them a lot for it. The bars are pretty low, so I have a tendency to slouch, which is far from perfect. So if you're rather tall, you might want to get some taller handlebar if that's possible. I think I would do that because here on this bike I just look like an 80-year-old resting in front of a store after hardcore shopping, and this is not good, as this Honda suspension will test you, especially if you're over 20 years old. You better keep yourself straight, as 12 centimeters of suspension travel, and the way it works makes it a pretty harsh experience. This does not apply to those of you who will get the NC750X to ride it from a living room to the bathroom and back, or on a perfectly flat racetrack. Now, Tracer 9 from Yamaha is also rather stiff, but it's manageable, while NC750X is just hard in an unpleasant way to me. Way too hard, in other words. And there's nothing I can do about that. There's nothing we can do about that. There's no soft mode, there's no comfort mode. There's only one mode, and it's hard. This is that second big complaint from me next to the wind protection issue. Now, what is cool? Take a look where the fuel cap is. It's on the passenger seat. This is a sign that Honda wants you, along with your passenger, to move and work out more. We've got to be fit. No one sits on a bike during refueling, and I agree. The engine, exhaust, and some other things are hot. There's fire hazard, so get off. You get access there by unlocking the seat with a key in a place where a fuel tank cap usually is. It's pretty cool. Fuel tank capacity is just 14.1 liters, and the key there you can turn in two ways. And the second one allows you to access a huge 23-liter storage compartment. I really don't know what I would carry there on a daily basis, but whatever we would put into a top case now can go in there. And this is brilliant. And also, it's a hint for us about the whole idea of this bike. Keep that in mind when it's conclusion time soon. So what happens if you want to have fun not only in a straight line, but also on some twisty road around your favorite grocery store or a clinic? If you are not going too fast, it's fine, as Honda will lean fine also for most lazy or easy maneuvers. And what I mean by that is that it's fine until it's not fine anymore. Yeah, on slow speed turns or long turns, depending on your speed, the bike easily leans left and right. It does it rather quickly and everything is all right. But if you want to play with it, there is a clear barrier. There's a moment in which when you reach it, Honda is like, no, mister, this is not good for you. Get back up and stop fooling around, you little snot. In other words, leaning more doesn't work that well as the bike tries to get up, not only to reach back to that barrier and stay in its comfortable zone, but to get back totally upright, which is quite interesting. Not the best. But then there is a fight, and overall it doesn't inspire much confidence because of that. And that is confusing after that initial ease of a lean. But then again, low speeds, no drama, and just chill. You didn't get a motorcycle with an automatic gearbox to get crazy on it. If you do, no. Overall, I don't consider NC750X to be a very well handling bike. Until some point it's okay. Riding straight between the cars at lower speeds, that's fine. Riding faster and turning, that's a no-no. What is good is brakes. Front brake is strong, it feels solid, it feels easy to dose, and even the rear brake not only works, but it slows the bike down fine on its own. Very well done, Honda. I like the brakes on this bike. There is ABS, but I believe it's a traditional type that does not take into account if you are cornering, so it's not cornering ABS. Likely, it seems so. The distraction control, which is set for, well, slower riders, I think, and there is an LED front light. You may also add heated grips, you may add the center stand, USB, and also crash bars. There are basic functions like daily trip in the onboard computer that you access through that pretty standard looking display. Nothing very fancy here, but what's worth to mention when talking about Honda in particular, this display loads instantly with no delays. It's unlike in, for example, their Honda Africa Twin 1100. This here is much better, it works and nothing gets in the way in terms of the display and how you go through the menus. It's pretty easy once you see how to do it. Now, until you decide to use an indicator to indicate changing lanes, to indicate turning, or just until you try honking at somebody. So yes, my first experience is that switching or attempting to switch indicators off can be quite loud and scary. Well, this seems to be also typical to Honda, as they install a horn button in a place where everyone else installs an indicator switch. Now add a downshift button for DCT and now I don't even try to use I literally almost haven't even tried to use transmission's manual mode, and before I would use an indicator, I would first look or first try to feel if it's the right switch. It's like installing a steering wheel in a car behind you, behind the driver, instead of in front. Everyone installs it in front of the driver. So, you know, just making things different just for the sake of making them different, it doesn't necessarily work better. It doesn't work better in this case. If my name was Honda and I wanted to be different than my competitors, I would put a drive shaft on an NC750X instead of a chain. Moto Guzzi have done it with their V85TT and it works fine, it's something unique. This would also suit this bike and give it some arguments. On the other hand, actually what for? Why would we need that? Riding in a city or just to the shop to get water or beer and show off with those 40 cans of beer hidden in a bike's storage, where normally fuel tank is. One of the reasons that dragged me to this NC750X that I haven't mentioned yet is the design. And to me, it's a good looking bike, as long as it's in some interesting color and not necessarily all black like this one or silver. I like the red ones and also blue that are there for 2023. The design reminds me of that cool VF Air 1200. Both rims here are 17-inch rims and it's just a solid looking motorcycle that people actually, that's interesting, people actually are looking at on the streets and they ask about it. I even got dragged into a conversation about it at the petrol station. The guy was asking what it was and I first proudly mentioned that it's got an automatic transmission, and I immediately in my head regretted that, realizing that it may sound pretty maybe lame. So I followed and I called it a motorcycle scooter. That was supposed to be a great joke and I regretted that too, so I just then later shut up and just left quietly. I still think it's cool, however. So to conclude this initially interesting and then strange encounter, let me unveil my analysis on what Honda NC750X is. We have established that it's not an adventure bike. Even riding over a curb, which I tried once exactly right next to that petrol station, I'm not going to try that again, it feels scary with its 12 centimeters of suspension travel and 14.5 centimeters of ground clearance. My definition now is that this is a vehicle that you can use when you are commuting in the city only. But the thing is that there are other vehicles that commute quicker, much more comfortably, with more fun and precision, and that can actually turn also at speed and also sharply and won't fight you back. Some of those can be taken off the road also. Some you can successfully and pleasantly travel on in addition for long distances. But only this one will look and feel cooler than a moped, while having all the benefits of a moped except for, well, feeling like you're sitting on a toilet if someone's into that. I'm not gonna have that here. So it's even better, in fact. There is even a huge storage. That's great. That one thing to consider in favor of mopeds maybe is that some of them can have big windshields that may already give you better wind protection. That's a thing to mention here to keep things fair. Other than that, this is much cooler. It's equally quick, if not quicker, than most of them. It doesn't require having a motorcycle gear like motorcycle boots to change gears thanks to the automatic transmission, provided that you get it with DCT. So this is what it is. It's a nicer moped for city riding. This is my conclusion. And I'm giving this bike a score of 5 out of 10 on Vitol's recommendation board, and considering its fairly still low price, it's not a bad idea if you're really considering getting a moped. It may work if you are hesitating whether a position on a moped with nothing to hold with your knees would suit you. Then this Honda could.